What's good, everybody? Dexter Henry here, New York Got Game live edition following the 2025 NBA draft. The Brooklyn Nets, the only of the New York teams with picks in the first round. The Nets had 5 picks, and the Nets made all their picks. First team in NBA history to make all their picks. Shocking. I did not think they make all their picks. I thought they would be involved in a trade or at least kick back possibly the last 2 picks, but they did not. Anyway, Dexter Henry, I'm here, joined by Bryan Fonseca. We will be joined momentarily by Anthony Puccio, the site manager for Nets Daily, our good friend joining us from there. Bryan, how you doing? What do you think of this draft?
I'm surprised that it at least appears. We'll talk to Pooch about it. Our guy Pooch from back in the day. Like we
Yes.
all go back like about a decade. But um, if they keep all 5 picks, that would surprise me a little bit. But the indications are that that seems to be the case, and it does tell me like, okay, they're going to make some more moves in terms of trades, in terms of what's going to happen with Nick Claxton. Obviously, we're always monitoring that Cam Johnson situation, even the Cam Thomas situation. He's a restricted free agent. What's that going to look like? Is he going to opt for obviously a longer term deal? What are they going to offer
Mm-hmm.
to him? Or is he going to try to gamble on himself and not take something that is restricted and have to take something and just take a qualifying offer so that he's unrestricted next year? I know that's a little bit more like, what would he really do that? But I feel like a lot of things are on the table as it relates to this Nets team. I don't expect that option to happen, but you never know. But 5 first round picks, they definitely got some talent, some guys that I think there will be questions about, and the questions are all warranted. These are rookies; they're not finished prospects.
Nope.
And a theme in this draft was a lot of guys who can't shoot or have struggled shooting, I should say, prior to this. And we'll see. In a few examples, you could find like a Jeremiah Fears, a guy who shot really well from the free throw line, but didn't from three. Maybe he does become a shooter. But like with these Nets picks, I have some questions, but there's no doubt that they got talent, they got some length, they got some size. So we'll see.
I think what's interesting is they went heavy on the guard position here when you brought up how it'll impact other players. Um, so just to go over, and we have a nice full screen to show people if you missed this of all the graphics of all the picks that the Nets made. But the Nets, excuse me, they made 5 first-round picks tonight. They had the number 8 selection where they selected Igor Demin from BYU, Nolan Traore from France, guard from France, Drake Powell, UNC guard. So they went in and asked for the first 2, pick 22, coming from the trade that they got involved with yesterday with the Hawks acquiring that pick there. Then they took back-to-back picks, Ben Saraf, a guard from Israel, and Danny Wolf from Michigan, big man who is a really good passer, and we will get to that later. He was one of the last players, I think the last player actually, in the green room if you saw him at the draft. So 5 picks made by the Nets. They're going all in on the youth movement. Our beat reporter Brian Lewis had told me, he's like, look, this team is not trying to even be as good as they were last year. They want to be worse. They want to acquire talent. They wanted to use their cap space, which is why we thought maybe they would try to trade up. Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, that did not happen. So all very interesting with the Nets. But we're not going to waste any time. We are going to bring in our guest. He is the site manager of Nets Daily. This is a Nets Daily reunion, basically, people. All 3 of us on this show today have worked for Nets Daily at some point in some time. We go back with this guy, as I said, site manager from Nets Daily, Anthony Puccio, joins us now. Pooch, what's good, my guy? I thought you might be in a suit, bro. I didn't know what to expect. I thought you might be in a suit.
Fellas, it's a pleasure to be here, but times have passed, and I think the suit's not retired, but have calmed down a little bit.
Calm down a bit.
More casual wear. It's a long night, no suit for me.
Nah, I hear you on that. You can't be chilling in the suit at home, especially in this heat. I know we all got the AC on, but you can't be doing that. Pooch, I think, I saw you tweeting about this leading up to the draft. I did as well, too. I don't think any of us expected that the Nets would take all 5 players. Were you shocked as much as I was about this? And what does this mean for the direction of this franchise with them taking an unprecedented 5 players in the first round?
Yeah, I was definitely shocked. I think especially after seeing the trade they made yesterday to acquire Atlanta's pick, and having 5, you figured landing at number 8 was a disappointment for them after losing 56 games, and that maybe, just maybe, they would bundle some of those picks, maybe an asset like Cam Johnson or Nick Claxton, and try and move back into the top 10, maybe at 9, maybe at 10, one way or another. I think a lot of Nets fans had the expectation that they were going to try and move up as far to get an Ace Bailey type. So for them to come out of this with all 5 picks, I can't say I'm completely shocked, because I think that Sean Marks really at his exit press conference made it very clear that he wants homegrown stars.
Hmm.
He wants to build this thing from the ground up, and that's no surprise. And it's strategic on for on-court reasons, but also off-court reasons with the new CBA. And he emphasized that in having these rookie salaries and having control over their second contract, not just their first, but also their second. So,
Mm.
to a sense, yes, I'm surprised they didn't try and utilize the flexibility that he's talked so much about to get somebody in that top 5 or 2 out of that top 10. But on the other hand, I'm not surprised that they're going to roll out 5 guys that they drafted that they're going to develop on their own, and they're going to send straight to to the summer league, probably where Jordi Fernandez is going to coach.
Yeah, which is interesting because you're keeping the head coach with the guys you're trying to develop. I guess the thing is, if you're not surprised, and look, Pooch, I say this all the time when it comes to these picks, we don't know. We have
Right.
no idea how these guys. I've had Nets fans tweeting at me saying, Dex, well, how many do they need to hit on of this group to be successful? And I say, look, if 3 of these 5 guys are rotation players and or above, I would consider that an absolute win. But what do you think of the draft? What do you think of these players? Do you like them at all? Were there any initials like you're like because a couple the first pick, Nets fans and Igor Demin weren't too happy on the socials about it. What did you think about what they did overall here at the draft?
I think the word for it is unorthodox. They
Hmm.
selected 3 out of 5 international born players, and I guess that shouldn't be much of a surprise given Shaw Marks and Jordi Fernandez's backgrounds. But you look at that number 8 pick. I think Yegor was somebody that was mocked somewhere in the teens, and it felt like the Nets kind of settled, and it appeared to be that he was the guy that they had their eyes set on if Jeremiah Fears was off the board. A lot of people were thinking best player available, this, that, or the other thing, but it's very, very clear that the Nets had one intention, and that was to find their future point guard for this team. And they think that it could be Jaeger. They think it could be Nolan Trower, um, even Ben Saraf. I mean, they really went guard heavy. It was very unorthodox. I think, Dex, you hit on the point. Like, we don't know anything until these guys play, but what surprises me most is that this Nets team under Jordi Fernandez, even while they're rebuilding last year, and even though they didn't have much talent, they still chucked 40, 45 3-pointers a game. And they picked 3 point guards that are not known for their shooting whatsoever. I
Mm.
mean, Yegor Demon, he shot 27% from 3 last year. Uh, you know, Ben Saraf, not somebody who's known for his shooting. He's another one who shot about 28% from 3. With these guys, if it seems that they're malleable. It seems that they picked one with Yegor, who's long and a big guard at that, but not the most athletic, not someone who's going to beat you off the first dribble. So when you're talking about someone who can't shoot and he's handling the rock all the time, you're going to have to set a pick every single time he's coming down the floor.
Mm.
Then you kind of go opposite with Nolan Trero, and I apologize if I'm saying his name wrong, but he's out of France, and he's quick, and he can get to the rim a little bit easier because of his speed. And then Ben Saraf, there's not much that I know about him, but again, it's puzzling that they're trying to squeeze these guys in that aren't really known for shooting, especially in today's league where it feels like, it's really hard to have a point guard, a starting point guard
That
at
can't
that,
shoot.
that can't shoot the damn ball. And with all due respect, like, I'm getting a lot of texts about a worse version of Ben Simmons or a Josh Giddey light type of
He's
player in Yegor. And look, he's still young. He's 19 years old. I could eat my words, but the fit just doesn't seem appropriate in Jordy Fernandez's system. But again, I'm liable to be very much wrong.
Brian had the same concerns about the shooting. I was on Brian's show earlier during the draft. That was his concern about Yegor with the shooting here. But then I was watching a little bit more of him, and Brian, I'll let you hop in here now, because the only thing I saw about him is he seemed like he's a pretty good passer, and he had a good feel for the game. And then when you look at all these guards in that's drafted, they're all 6'5" and above. So big, long guards. Nobody's super athletic, even though I think athleticism sometimes can be a bit overrated in today's NBA. But they all have size. Brian, I know you're concerned about the shooting like pooches here. Do you think the Nets have something with one of these guards? I mean, they kind of have to hit on one of these.
I mean, one of the things that I noticed, and I'm going to toss it to you, Pooch, here, because in this draft, it's a trend where a lot of these guys can't really shoot or haven't demonstrated the ability to shoot yet. You mentioned the percentages. You get 3 guys who are in the 20s, essentially. Yeah. And it's like, okay, what's going to happen here? And at the same time, like, none of them are great free throw shooters. So it's like, is there a pathway to becoming a better shooter? There's questions about that. With Demon and with Traore, those are 2 of the best passers in the draft. In fact, I think Nolan Traore is the best passer in this draft. So I do think he has one skill set that he really excels at. From a defensive standpoint, like, he has size. We'll see what he can give you on that end. But he's been a very good passer in Francis St. Quentin. And Ben Saraf, who plays right now in Germany, I think he's playing right now in the German League Championship with Noah Essengay, who actually left to be in the draft, which was a whole controversial thing. But he showed there that he can make some plays too in terms of passing the ball, playmaking for others. But the finishing ability is a question mark with a lot of these guys. Like, all these guards kind of have the same question, where it's like, they can't really shoot. They could all play make for others. They could score themselves, but they're not efficient finishers. And we'll get to Danny Wolf and Powell in a second. But, like, does that a trend that concerns you, where 3 of these 5 picks are, like, not similar in terms of, you know, athletic profile, but in terms of skill set, in terms of what they're good at and what they sort of need work in?
Absolutely. And again, it goes back to what we mentioned earlier about Jordy Fernandez's system. I mean, and that goes for every NBA team for that matter that are chucking 43 pointers a game. Maybe they feel this is an area where they can develop them. These guys are all 19 years old. They appear to be malleable, but, you know, you mentioned that their strongest upside is their passing, which is great and all. High court vision, high basketball IQ, but the Nets right now don't have anybody to pass the ball to other than Cam Thomas and Cam Johnson. You know, and that's said respectfully. You know,
Right.
this is a team that, you know, in a league where your ball handler has got to be a threat. He's got to be a threat from the floor, from the 3 ball. And like I said, if these guys can't shoot, you're going to be relying on a lot of pick and rolls, and the teams are going to be playing drop coverage against them. But for the Nets right now, this is the long game. They're playing the long game. They're looking at the big picture. Sean Marks traded 3 future picks to get 2 of his own back, which were 2025 and 2026. I think the contingency plan for falling out of the top 5 in this year's draft was having their own picks in 2026, so they can kind of run it back with Jordy, have their own guys doing it, and you know, lose a lot of games again. I think they might actually be worse than last year, but they'll be okay with it as long as it's their own guys.
And then with 2 of their later first round picks, who we haven't touched on much, Danny Wolf, who actually Rich mentions in the comments, I think also jokingly said, when will Sean Marks draft somebody taller than him? Danny Wolf is 7 feet tall. Danny Wolf is also, as a big, one of the best playmakers. Again, with the passing, one of the best playmakers, very good passing big. Has a game that both Dex and I actually like. He's tough defensively. We'll see where he sort of lies. He could stretch it out to 3 a little bit. I think, like, he has the most interesting skill set, arguably, of maybe all of these guys, given that he's big, that can pass, and can shoot. And then you have Drake Powell, who slightly a surprising pick, but he projects to be more of a 3-and-D guy because he's lauded for his defense and also his ability to shoot. He won't get to the rim a ton. So in terms of like free throws, don't worry about that. But he could shoot. He's probably the best shooter that they have. So it's weird because I have some questions about some of the guys they took early on, but later in the first round, I'm like, okay, there's a world where Drake Powell is maybe a 3-and-D role player. And with Danny Wolf, a lot of people were like getting high on him leading up to the draft. So it was kind of surprising that he fell to the Nets. So how would you evaluate, I guess, these two guys that they got late?
I loved the Drake Powell pick. I always love to see a 3-and-D player coming out of UNC. He wasn't really somebody that created much on the ball, but playing off the ball,
Mhm.
in a scenario like this where maybe Cam Thomas is isolating or making a play and defenses are drawing to him, this is where Drake Powell will make his money. As far as Danny Wolf goes, as you mentioned, Brian, kind of a point center, playmaker. He could play down low. He could play outside. He could put the ball on the floor a little bit. Um, he's intriguing because again, we don't know the futures of Nick Claxton and Cam Johnson, right? We don't know really what their front court is going to look like, and I could even throw Day'Ron Sharpe in there too, who's a restricted free agent, right? So 3 of their big men that they have on the roster now,
Right.
we don't know who's coming back next year. So Danny Wolf is somebody that should slide in there and fit seamlessly no matter where. And this kind of seems to be a theme of this draft. Dex, you mentioned that everybody's taller than 6'5" that they
Yeah.
drafted. So,
Yeah.
we don't know who's going to be handling the rock, if this is something that's going to be like an interchangeable lineup. But this is a Sean Marks draft if I've ever seen it. They have never had a dominant big man. They've had good rim running big men,
Yeah.
2 of which that he drafted being Claxton and Jared Allen.
Jared
Mhm.
But
Allen.
we've known, and Brian, Dex, you guys covered the Nets with me back in those days, and it's like
Mhm.
they never had that dominant big man, right?
They
Like
were
that
always
guy that
looking for it too. They were always looking for it, could
right,
never get it.
Yep.
The 4 was a question the entire. It's like Rondé
right,
Hollis Jefferson and Quincy
right,
Hasty and Dante Cunningham,
right.
and it's like Damari Carroll. Oh my god.
Well, exactly. I mean, I thought they had a great opportunity with Malawach at 8. I really,
Yeah,
really,
I
really thought
agree.
they
Yeah.
had it there. And coming into this, I said this is the guy they got to try and get at 8. And when they passed on him, I was definitely disappointed because I said this could finally be the moment that Sean Marks has a legitimate center on his roster. And it goes back to his first days here. I mean, Justin Hamilton, Anthony Bennett were starting at center, right?
Oh man. Oh man. Pooch, you're taking people back to the pain. Man.
Hey, look, it's 10 years for Sean Marks, and I believe that this draft is going to be the make or break for him. This has to work. He has got to not only get 1 win out of this, he's got to get a couple of wins out of this draft.
Yeah.
You have 5
When
first round draft picks.
I want to follow up with you on that because I said if 3 of these players are rotation players or above, Pooch, is it more? Do you need to hit? Does one of these guys at least need to be a borderline all-star or I don't know what do some of these guys need to be? Do you need 1 borderline all-star, 2 rotation players? What do you need to see out of this draft?
I think you need at least 1 all-star to come out of this. At the very least, I would say 1 all-star, a second fringe all-star, because look, he's building from scratch, and it hasn't worked in the past. He specifically has said himself that the Nets do not want to position themselves as a 6 or 7 seed. If that means chasing stars, if that means competing with aging veterans, whatever it might be. But right now, if these guys are all role players, we're looking at a future in Brooklyn where they are a 6 or 7 seed. So they really do need at least one of these guys to be an all-star. Dex and Brian.
No, I get that, and shout out to Stefano in the chat because you make a good point. He said, "Back to the pain. We're in the pain right now." You were right. You were right, man.
Oh, yeah.
I understand where you're going with all of that.
I don't want to be like too hard on like, because it sounds like we're like ripping the draft. It's just there are a lot of questions here, and for a team with 5 first-round picks, for a front office that I thought did some good work pre Durant and Kyrie, obviously, and even within the last year or so, like I thought Jordi Fernandez was a good hire. They've done some other things, but like 5 first-round picks, and I felt like, and maybe this is a me problem, I feel like I should be leaving with fewer questions than I am. And starting with the number 8th overall pick, like there were some guys on the board. We talked about Malawach that I felt better about. And Demon's film wasn't my favorite, is what I'll say.
And you guys can tell me if you agree with me this here, right? Because I think Brian is fair on the fact that there are more questions than you might like about. I think it's a great way to put it, actually. But
they drafted well in the past also, so I want to grant them that.
Yeah. I also will say, as I said at the top, we don't ever know in the draft. Draft it's not an exact drafting is not an exact science.
Correct.
So what you have to hope and trust, and I guess this is a great question for Pooch, as in his elongated history of covering the Nets, is that do you trust, based on what you've seen from Sean Marks in the past, that he will get it right, as you said, with one of these guys? And I do agree with you that this draft and probably what happens in the next year or two really matters for Sean Marks, who is GMing, for lack of a better term, for his career here, because as long as he's been here. And I think when you look at the chat, when you look at what people have been tweeting at me and you guys on social media, this is not a very popular draft. Do you trust Sean Marks based on his track record? He has found some guys. I mean, you brought up Jared Allen. Jared Allen's been an all-star. He found him with 19th pick. He's found some guys. He's got a good center in Nick Claxton. He's found some diamonds in the rough. But the Nets fan, I think this is what I hear you saying, Pooch. They're not here for the diamond in the rough. They're here. They're trying to find a star. Now, nobody's guaranteed to be a star, but do you trust that Sean Marks can get this done? Because I think you put it correctly, but do you trust, based on what you've seen in Sean Marks' years of covering the team, do you trust that he can get it done?
Look, guys, this is his 9th year here, and the Nets have won 2 playoff series. That's the fact of the matter. That's objective, and it is what it is. But I would be ignorant to ignore where he came from. And when he came to Brooklyn in 2016, you guys remember well enough that they had no picks, they had no real assets to make much out of it, and he still was able to hire a good head coach in Kenny Atkinson and restructure the organization, find a way to grab picks late in the first round, in the 20s, and get guys like Jared Allen, like Harris LeVert, like Nick Claxton, and build this team up. As for how he handles superstars and egos, I think that Sean Marks is one of those general managers who really loves to have a lot of control. And they set it on Scout, their series, that they don't want a player that's going to come into Brooklyn and change them and their identity and who they are. So, Dex, when you ask me if I trust Sean Marks, I trust Jordi Fernandez as a head coach to develop some of these young guys if he's given the right amount of time. And I trust them to eventually get there, to compete and to be that Brooklyn grit team that Sean Marks wants to be, and that culture they coach. But
Pooch, what I hear there is I believe we have a coach, which I agree with you, but you're not sure about your GM. That's what I'm hearing.
And he's had a long road too.
Look, man, I said it. Two playoff series wins in 9 years.
The facts are the facts.
The facts are the facts, and I think that I trust him to rebuild when expectations are low. I expect him to exceed because they're so low and because his leash is so long. But when it comes to actually building a championship contender, this is year 2 of losing 50-plus games. It's not rebuild year number 1 just because they have their picks. They stunk last year with Mikal Bridges when they were actually trying to win, and they didn't have their own pick. So when it goes past that certain stage of rebuilding, having minimal expectations, praising their grit and competitiveness, and actually building a championship contender, no, I don't trust him. He failed the first time with arguably one of the most talented big threes ever. And you could say there were extraordinary circumstances with that team. But irregardless, he was the general manager during all of that. He will take accountability. And I do not trust him to right this ship in terms of a championship contender. I expect him to get them to compete again under Jordi Fernandez. But that's about it.
I'm seeing one playoff series win in that 2020-2021 season, because it felt like they got to the conference finals, but they didn't.
And the other playoff series win was
that's it. With Marks, that's it.
They have Boston.
So here's from
Oh yeah, just the Boston series. What
they
did
made
it? Did he? No, that
they
was
made
before
they
March.
made it to the playoffs 5 years straight. They won one series. They got swept 3 times in the first round, and the other time they lost in 5 games. That was the D'Angelo Russell Karis LeVert team.
That's right.
So in the midst of that, and he's gotten a second chance. I also think Pooch, he's gotten a second chance because of the extenuating circumstances. In terms of like how the big three, like they got it, but it kind of almost was out of his hands with everything that happened with Kyrie and then the friction with Harden and all these different things. So it's like, okay. And I think when Sean Marks is allowed to be a GM, he's been a GM who can find guys, turn them into role players, turn them into starters and things of that nature. Like their developmental system has been good in the past, but right now they're at a weird time. And I agree with you, like they have to hit on this draft, especially when you have 5 chances. There are other GMs who are like, they have to hit on this draft and they have 1 pick. They have 5 chances. And I do think like if this wasn't the Nets, like if this was the other team in New York, he would have been fired by now, probably multiple times if that's possible. He's almost kind of skating a little bit. So I could say like I respect him on one side, but at the same time, it's like, like there's a resume here that a lot of people wouldn't survive, to your point.
Oh, I've been said this, and I've talked with Brian Lewis about this, and so I agree. I think some people may hear your analysis, Pooch, and think it's a bit harsh. I don't think it's harsh. I think you're just here stating the facts. I guess some other things I want to talk to you about because it's interesting, and we all have talked about this. You wonder what this means for guys. You mentioned Nick Claxton, Cam Johnson, and I think Cam Thomas the most here because they now have all these 5 first-round picks are going to get signed, right? They're going to go to Summer League. 3 of them are guards. Excuse me, 4 guards. 4 guards, excuse me. Where's the room for – there's no market now for Cam Johnson because the only team that really has a lot of cap space that could have signed him is the Nets, and kind of negotiating against himself with the Nets. Cam Thomas, excuse me, not Johnson. I mean Cam Thomas.
Yeah. I was going to say there's a market for Cam Johnson. You call the Pistons right now.
Oh yeah, there's a market for Cam Johnson, and that it makes you think that okay, the Nets will be able to trade him, whether it's in summer at the deadline, add some more picks for the future. The Nets only have 1 pick next year. How do you think this affects a guy like Cam Thomas? Do you think he's back? Is he part of the future plan? Should Nick Claxton? I think we know Cam Johnson is not going to be part of this team's future plans long term, but the other 2 guys, Nick Claxton and Cam Thomas, what do you think about their futures?
With Cam Thomas, I was puzzled after they took their 3rd guard tonight out of 4, right? Because my understanding, and we reported it on Nets Daily, was that he could command up to $100 million over 4 years with the Nets.
Yep.
Isn't much competition, as you mentioned.
Nope.
He's somebody that, again, he's homegrown. He's somebody that they want to keep. He's shown that he's a bucket. Whether he's worth that money or not is up for interpretation. But, but now to answer your question, though, Dex, now I'm confused because I don't know where he fits in, or is it just kind of going to be like ISO Cam all year long, and these guys are kind of trying to fit the pieces and see where their strengths are on the ball, off the ball, whatever it might be. It's just very confusing, and Cam Thomas doesn't really appeal to me as a swing the ball around the perimeter type of player. He needs the rock in his hands, and he needs time to cook. And it doesn't seem like he's going to be able to do that with these guys, especially if they're prioritizing their development specifically.
Yeah, it's really hard to see how he develops with this group, and then you're adding a whole bunch of other guards. That's the tough part for me to see.
Coach, do you think with the 5 first-round picks that they should have traded up in this draft? Because Dex and I had talked about this. You and I talked about this earlier, where like there was smoke about them potentially moving up, like high up in the draft.
Yep.
Ultimately, the deal did not come through, or it just didn't happen. So, like, do you think this will become something that they regret and not potentially winding up and walking away from this draft with 5 first-round picks and trying to get, instead of what they got, maybe a VJ Edgecombe, giving themselves a shot at an Ace Bailey or a Trey Johnson, as opposed to what they walked away with?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say, and lucky for the Nets, we won't be able to answer this question legitimately for another 3, 4 years. But I do think at some point, yeah, you hope to kind of nab that bona fide college star or bona fide European star, international star, and it doesn't feel like they got that, right? And I think that's why fans are very disappointed. They didn't really nab that name or somebody that people were watching or were excited to watch. Of course, that is subject to change, but yeah, it's a very strange situation right now. And I'm sorry, guys, I lost my train of thought for some reason, Brian.
No, you're good. No, you're
It's
good.
been a
Sean Marks got
long,
everybody
long.
messed up.
The Nets have everybody messed up. We got Wesley Slay, my guy Wes in the chat says the
What's
Nets are
up,
2 years
Wes?
away from being 2 years away. There's so
Yeah.
much negative vibes from the fan base that I feel right now. I guess we can sort of end on this. What grade do you give this draft? I
You
kind of
hate draft
sometimes
grades. I'm surprised you're asking me.
I kind of hate draft grades because you can't really know how good a draft is until 3 years down the road. You can't really know. But let's give it a draft vibes grade off of the vibes, okay? What are we? What are we? Yeah, Pooch is like Pooch is thinking D and below. He's thinking that right now. What's the grade? What's the grade off the vibes of this Pooch?
All right. So I remember what I was saying before, but I
Okay,
was hoping
yeah,
they would Brian. I was hoping they would trade up for a second pick in the top 10 and somehow end up with Jeremiah Fears and Malawak. I thought that would be a dream scenario for Brooklyn Nets fans and for the organization alike. Dex, to your question about vibes right now, if we're not actually talking about like what they got, what it is. Vibes around Brooklyn right now, we're talking about a D, maybe a C plus, like at most. At highest, I'm giving them a C plus.
That's
It's clear
passing.
that they're trying to find that diamond in the rough, and again, how do these guys fit in? We've seen a lot of foreign players come to the NBA and find success. A lot of these previous MVPs that have been soaring are foreign born players. So, maybe I'm just being, ignorant or naive, or I haven't done my studying. There's a reason why I'm talking to you guys right now, and I'm not in that war room with Sean Marks. But as a basketball fan and somebody who likes to watch the Nets and covers them, the vibes are a C plus right now at best. I'm
To be
excited
fair,
to see Agmar.
though,
Excited.
like as somebody who watches a lot, and Dex knows this, I watch a lot of international basketball
you do.
relative to like the average basketball viewer. This draft for international players kind of weird. Don't know if it's going to be like super like awesome or whatever. That's not including necessarily VJ Edgecombe, who plays for the Bahamian national team, for example.
Yeah.
But like, it's just a weird draft with like Noah Essengay. What is he really? Hansen Yang Hansen from China. He went way earlier than some people thought. Like a lot of people had him pegged as a second round pick.
He had a great combine though.
Yeah, I was a little surprised to see that he went to 16, for example. And then obviously we talked about Traore, who I love his passing ability. Everything else, I'm like, I don't really know. Like, we'll see. I did think he would go higher than 19 though, so I think that's potentially a value play. I ironically like that pick more than the 8th overall pick, but we could look back in 3 years and be like, oh, I was wrong about that, because we just don't know with a lot of these guys. But yeah, I think it's a weird year for international talent, because there wasn't somebody coming over, so to speak, who was like an obvious star. People from Spain hope that Hugo Gonzalez could be good for their national team moving forward, but I don't really know what he is, as a guard who can't really shoot like that and doesn't play like your typical guard who plays in, Liga ACB anyway, and he's going to be with the Celtics. So it's just an odd draft, like all the way around. And I think some of the depth from this draft that people were excited about did leave, because a bunch of guys did go back to school. They're going to try again next year, be it for NIL or just because they feel like they can go higher next year with another year of experience. And maybe that affected things too. But I feel like we may look back and be like, man, that was maybe a missed opportunity to move up with 5 first-round picks. But at the same time, if you hit on 3 of these 5, then it'll be like, oh, okay, remember that time where they had all these picks. But we'll see.
We will see. We'll see if they hit on it. I do think it's a big one. I do understand. I think a lot of one last thing I'll say before we go is I do think a lot of the disappointment that you're seeing from Nets fans in the chat and on social media, I think it comes from the fact that it's not about the unknown of the players. We know you can hit on international players. I think they took 4 guards, and I think that's the thing. Like that you just just see it last year in the most recent comment here, right? The next taking 3 point guards out of 5 first-round picks. Like, I think that's the shocking part of it, how much they leaned into guards. Now, I wonder what else is coming, what other moves are coming. We'll see through the rest of the offseason. But, it's good. The Nets are still open for business, take on more cap space, try to acquire more future picks. There's a lot of things they can do, but we'll see. Okay, but the vibes are not good in Nets Nation, and we'll see if they get better. Pooch,
answer this question, Pooch, because we
Yeah.
got one in the chat. Actually, are they keeping Terrence Mann, who they just got in a trade?
To my understanding, they're going to keep Terrence Mann, but we'll find out. Again, a lot is subject to change in the next week by July 6th, even with these
July
5
6th.
picks that they have right now.
Yep. Yeah,
Um,
that trade can't be official till then. Yeah.
Yeah. But guys, I want to make a point before I hop off. I
Yeah,
want
go.
to say before, like, the one thing that really floored me about this draft with the Nets and Sean Marks is I thought they had themselves in pole position to pick the best player available. Like that, this was the type of draft where you do that and then figure out the pieces later. It's very clear that they didn't take the best player available and they settled because they were specifically going after guards, which is the most surprising part of this whole spiel to me. I thought they could have done a lot better, but we'll find out. I just want to throw that out there because a lot of fans, you asked me about the vibes and what the expectations were. A lot of us expected the best player available, and I don't think that he was the best player available at 8, 19. I think there are a lot of other players that they could have went for that have more talent, but instead they were very much focused on a point guard. The last time that they drafted their own homegrown star point guard was Kenny Anderson. So maybe the Nets are trying to do it their way, and that's what it appears to be. So that's all I got for you guys. And
it's drafting guards and then guards with similar skill sets. That's the real perplexing thing.
That's the real thing. I think
the trend. You get 3 guys who the shot is shaky, but they could pass well, and it's like, okay, why 3 of them?
You got it. All I can say to this is you got to, a little bit of what Pooch said, you got to trust the development of Jordy Fernandez's potential in developing guys and getting them to come together. Because who knows? Maybe December we're sitting around and we're texting each other and it's like,
maybe. I think the Nets have the coach. I think Fernandez.
I do too.
So like I thought Kenny Atkinson.
I think they got their coach. I don't know about the rest of these dudes. So. That's what we don't know. We're trying to figure that out.
The coach needs players at the end of the day.
and to Pooch's point, he would have liked some play. He would have liked the coach to get the best player available. That's what we'll say. We can leave it at that. He'd have liked the coach to at least have had the best player available. That, everybody, is Anthony Puccio. Check him out. He's a site manager for Nets Daily. This was New York Got Game, but it basically was a Nets Daily reunion. Like I said, shout out to Nets Daily. Always shout out to Nets Daily. Everybody knows the guys from Nets Daily come on with me. Lucas Kaplan, Brian Florentin. They always come with me. Shout out to Bob, of course. Nets Daily is very special places in my heart, Brian's heart, and helped us tons in our career. So there's nothing I could ever say about that. Pooch, always appreciate you, my friend. Brian, appreciate you rocking with this late. I know it's late for everybody. I actually got to work and be in the studio tomorrow. Shout out to everybody in the chat. We appreciate you. Shout out to the production crew back in studio. My man, Nikolai Jackson, doing a fantastic job running everything. I'm Dexter Henry Bryan Fonseca, Anthony Puccio. We'll catch y'all next time on another edition of New York Got Game. Peace.